I would like to talk about the agricultural fires in the southeastern United States sampled during the SEAC4RS campaign. We will look at the emission factors as well as the evolution of reactive nitrogen and ozone. Agricultural fire is a common management practice. Large amounts of crop residue are burned in field every year, especially in the developing world. Agricultural fire is an important source of atmospheric trace gases and particles. It could also be a major global growing fire type since the global cropland area is expected to increase. During the SEAC4RS campaign, the highly instrumented NASA DC-8 aircraft was deployed, which enabled a unique opportunity to look at a large variety of compounds emitted from agricultural fires. These measurements also provide new insights into smoke chemistry. This table summarizes the trace gases and aerosols used in this study. And the 16 agricultural fires that we focus on were located in southeastern U.S. The vegetation burned is determined to be rice straw since it is virtually the only crop residue burned during fall in this region. Here is the simplified schematic showing how the aircraft sampled the fire plumes. The gray area represents the smoke, and the aircraft went through the smoke following two strategies: the cross-plume penetration, which were usually performed at or near the source, and the source to downwind transect, during which the samples of both fresh and aged plumes were obtained. This slide compares the concentrations of sulfur and chlorine emitted from the rimfire and one of the agricultural fires sampled on September 11th. In both figures on the left, all species are shown in mixing ratios. Carbon dioxide is shown in parts per million, while the other species are all in parts per billion. The levels of carbon dioxide in brown and carbon monoxide in blue are similar in both fires. For sulfur and chlorine, the agricultural fire, which is of much smaller magnitude than the rimfire, emitted much higher SO2 and chloride. The SO2 in red reaches up to 40 ppb and chloride up to 160 ppb. In this ag fire, we found that sulfur in the gaseous SO2 was higher than that in sulfate. And for chlorine, the ratio of chloride to gaseous hydrochloric acid reaches up to 70. In all agricultural fires, we found that sulfur was mainly emitted as SO2 and chlorine was mainly in the form of chloride. The emission factors of these sulfur and chlorine species and their variations in different agricultural fires are examined. The emission factor was calculated using the carbon mass balance method described in Yokelson et al. 1999. This table summarizes the emission factor statistics for these sulfur and chlorine compounds. All of them exhibited a lot of variations, and as expected, SO2 and chloride have relatively larger emission factors with averages of 0.8 and 1.1 gram per kilogram. Also listed in the table are the emission factors of Asian rice straw measured in lab during the Flame 4 study. For better comparison, the lab emission factors have been adjusted to the modified combustion efficiency observed during SEAC4RS. In general, the lab study obtained fresher smoke samples, which were usually seconds old, before any major sulfate or chloride formation, while the smoke sampled in field were usually several minutes old. Our SO2 emission factor is quite consistent with the lab measurement. The HCl in the field study is much slower than that in the lab study. It is likely that HCl decreases rapidly after emission by partitioning to the aerosol phase. Besides sulfur and chlorine compounds, other gases and particulate species are also measured, and plotted here are the average emission factors with one standard deviations. The species that have relatively larger emission factors include organic aerosol, hydroxyacetone, acetaldehyde, and methanol. Again, we compare the SEAC4RS emission factors with those obtained during Flame 4 that are already published. In general, the lab and field emission factors agree well. Among these overlapping species, we saw a lot more hydrogen cyanide, hydroxyacetone, and less acetaldehyde in field than in lab. For other species, the lab emission factors are about the same or slightly higher than the field emission factor. And the difference between these two sets of emission factors could be due to different field compositions and burning conditions. Emissions from biomass burning can be estimated using emission factor together with the mass of biomass burned. Here we made an estimation of SO2 and CO emitted from the agricultural field burning from the 4 states where these agricultural fires were located: Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Missouri. We used emission factors obtained during SEACers coupled with fire activity data from 3 different studies. And the first 3 bars in these 2 figures are our estimates. And the last red bar represents the estimate given by the 2011 National Emissions Inventory, in which the SO2 and CO emission data are available. It turns out that for both SO2 and CO, the estimate vary a lot with different fire activity data used. The fire activity data are uncertain, but the larger values are more widely used due to the recognition of the low detection rate from space for these small fires. In agricultural fires, we also saw really high levels of PAN. Let's look at the plume evolution in the agricultural fire. In this case, the aircraft flew from just above source to all smoke downwind. Across the bottom of this plot is the time since emission or smoke age in minute, and across the top of the plot is distance from source in kilometer. The PAN is plotted in red. NOAA and Ozone are plotted in green and blue respectively. The concentration of NOAA was largest near the source and then became smaller in downwind plume due to dilution. In contrast, the peak sizes of PAN and Ozone relative to that of NOAA were increasing. In addition, such evolution occurred in a short distance of about 10 kilometers. Then we plot the ratio of excess PAN to excess NOAA, excess ozone to excess CO, and excess nitrate, particularly nitrate to excess NOAA. We found that the ratio of PAN to NOAA reaches over 40% in less than 1 hour. For ozone, the production rate in 1 hour was similar to other biomass burning studies. The particulate nitrate also exhibited enhancement, and the ratio of nitrate to NOAA reaches over 30% in about 40 minutes, indicating the gas-to-particle conversion of nitrogen species. Here's another similar example of plume evolution. Again, we saw the similar enhancement trend of PAN, ozone, and nitrate in the downwind plume. Besides the previous 2 examples, there were 6 more fires that were sampled from source to downwind, and we plot the PAN to NOAA ratio versus the evolution time for each fire. We do have different photochemistry conditions, but we still see efficient conversion of NOAA to PAN in about 1 hour, which is about 30 to 50%, indicating that PAN is dominating the NOAA budget in downwind. On similar timescales, we saw higher yields of PAN during the SEACers ARCTAS campaigns than in a chaparral fire located in California. To investigate the processes that led to observed evolution, we employ a Lagrangian box model, which uses a geochem chemical mechanism coupled with additional aromatic chemistry. Here are some preliminary results of a case study of the agricultural fire sampled on September 11th. This case exemplifies one of the best transects that captured beautiful downwind evolution. In all these graphs, the square markers represent the averages of peaks at various distances downwind, and the curves represent model simulations. And the blue square here represent the average value of the small peak here, and it is likely that the aircraft at this point was not in the center of the plume. The model captures the dilution process pretty well, as can be seen from the CO and NOAA simulations. As for chemical processes, in general, the model did a reasonable job on simulating pan formation, as can be seen from the black curves, which are simulations constrained by measurement. The modeled pan agree with the observed pan within about 30%. However, the model tends to underestimate pan at the end. For ozone, the model consistently overestimates it, except at the end. We selected two oxygenated compounds, acetaldehyde and methylglycol, to perform sensitivity tests. For acetaldehyde, we observed 15 ppb in the fresh plume, and then varied by plus or minus a factor of 2. For methylglycol, it was not measured in this campaign, but was monitored in other residual burning studies. Therefore, we guessed the initial emission of methylglycol to be about 5 ppb using the existing emission factor. Then we decreased the concentration to 0 and also double the concentration to see the influence of methylglycol. We found that the concentrations of these two oxygenated compounds have some leverage to pan formation, but have little effect on ozone. To sum up, the emission factors for a set of gases and particular species were measured. Agricultural fires emitted significant levels of sulfur, mainly as SO2, and chlorine, mainly as chloride. The SO2 and the CO emission estimate vary a lot with the different fire activity data used. In plumes of agricultural fires, rapid formation of pan occurred in short distances. Our model, in general, reasonably simulates the pan and ozone formation. Our future work will focus on refining the model, and we will also model the evolution of particulate nitrate, since it is another important nitrogen species that were formed in fire plumes. We will also like to add in the emission and evolution of broad carbon to our study. I would like to thank our co-authors and everybody involved in SEAC4RS. I would also like to acknowledge the support of NASA. Thank you very much for your attention.
So we do have time for one or two questions, if anyone.
Looking at the numbers on paper CO and NOAA, mentally think of the ratio. It seemed that ratio of NOAA to CO increased by that factor of 2 over an hour.
Mm-hmm. So you mean you have seen that the ratio of NOAA to CO decreased by a factor 2 in about 1 hour? Or? Yeah, I think it could be, because maybe that indicates the loss of NOAA as the plume ages, right?
Yeah, but the question is, where is it going?
Probably to particle phase, I would say. Yeah.
One more in the back there.
Radical production and what initializes the ozone?
Sorry, I haven't heard the beginning of your...
Production in the first hour, is it, I mean, for colonists, is it just, is hono or formaldehyde important for radicals?
Well, we did have some sensitivity tests about formaldehyde, but it doesn't seem to affect ozone very much. And yeah, there's more work to do to investigate the ozone, why we overestimate it.